Hey, welcome back to The Craft, where we explore what we're learning about the creative process. I'm Colby, and I'm a product manager and music producer.
And I'm Carter, a writer and PhD candidate at the University of Kentucky. And today we are talking about products. So right up Colby's alley here as a product manager. Really, the guiding question for this conversation is going to be, why do we love the products that we love? What is it about them? Why do we prefer one thing to the other? What elements of design are helping kind of capture our attention, create and curate an experience with a product, and then really just kind of digging into the craft of beautiful products.
Yeah. I don't know why we originally came up with this idea, but obviously I've been thinking about products a lot more over the course of the last 12 months as I've stepped into product management in an official capacity, and we've just had interesting conversations about it in the past. So I think it makes a lot of sense and ties right into all the other conversations we have, because there's a kind of the prerequisite thought to this episode is like there's an art and a craft to making a great product. And so what is it about products that draws us to them? So I'm curious, do you want to start with what our favorite products are and try to go from there? Or is it just, let's try to answer that question straight out of the gate. Yeah, let's just try to answer that question straight out of the gate. Why do we love the products that we love? What's your first thought?
So the big thing that I came to was this kind of duality of utility and design for me, and that the products that I really enjoy are not mere tools in a utilitarian point of view. They don't just accomplish and solve the problem that they're trying to solve. It's the manner in which they accomplish it. And so I wanted to talk some about kind of the aesthetic qualities involved, and I wonder if it is going to be more fruitful to go along the multiple axes of products that you sent over. So physical products, digital or software products, and then maybe we can kind of flush this out at over the podcast. And so my short answer is, I think when utility and design or aesthetics meet in a really harmonious way, that for me is a product that I love. Because as I'm thinking about these, and we'll talk about these products for sure, they always hold these two things together.
That's really well said. I actually wrote down that the first thing for me was they solve a deep problem, and that's two-part. They solve a tangible problem, and they solve an emotional problem. And so I almost feel like the emotional side of things makes me think of what you described there as the aesthetics. Just how does this product make me feel? Because there's normally that deeper layer that I might not talk about. It's I just need to hang this painting on the wall. But then there's this emotion underneath it of I want it to look good whenever I have someone come over. I want to feel confident in the way that I decorated the space, that I did it right. So for me, there's that aesthetic side or the emotional side, and the tangible, I need to put a hole in the wall or I need to hang a painting. And I'm already totally in alignment on the first piece there. The other thing that I wrote down was good products make me feel a part of something bigger.
Ooh, nice.
Like community, or almost, I don't even know if this is a good thing or not, but they add to my identity. There's this strong, are you an iPhone user or an Android user? And there's a little bit more to it than just what do you prefer. It's some people don't care, but then a lot of people have sort of a brand loyalty, and they're oh no, I'm an Apple guy. I'm not going to go get a Garmin watch. I'm going to get an Apple Watch.
Sure.
Because it needs to integrate and all that stuff.
Yeah, our choices are so intertwined with our values, if I can interject there for a moment. It's there's something that, this is one of the conversations that appear in aesthetics as a field, is that, the things that we love and that we think are beautiful, Hume writes how they're not value neutral. It's not merely that, oh, I like this and you like that. But when you find something that you think is just incredible. There's this deep gut feeling of, no, you should like this. Like, this is really good. So like, think of the best movie that you've seen, recently. It's not just, oh, I really like that. It's, no, there's something here that I think you could come over and you could see this and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's valuable or that's beautiful. So I do think within our products, because products are so closely intertwined with design and aesthetics, is that there is a level of, it's like, okay, I should love a Patagonia windbreaker because of this broader field, like you mentioned, of community, of values, of what they stand for, of their guiding philosophy. It's something that's much more rich in meaning than merely, I like that color purple, I like the cut of it, which are not arbitrary. Those things are informing that. But there is this larger identity involved thing of the things that I value and the things that I love say something not only about them, but they also say something about me, right? The things that I value say something about me. And I think that's absolutely inescapable. And it's also probably exploited a lot of times in marketing. You can be like this, and it's not about the product anymore. It's about you. And I think the reason that gets exploited is because it's true.
Yeah. No, that's really well said. And to tie directly into what you just said, I recently read that there's a list of that there's 4 core human drives, like emotional or psychological, that most products fall under. This is from the Personal MBA. I mentioned it on another episode by Josh Kaufman. He said the 4 core drives are to acquire, bond, defend, learn, and actually he added a 5th, which is to feel. And so, you break those down a little further, like acquiring is where you see them advertising that's promising to make you wealthy or famous or beautiful. The desire to bond, it could be connection, romance, social status, defend, like privacy, safety, security, learn, could tie into some of those earlier things, but it's really just like to improve you, to expand what you know and your skills, and feel is kind of where we get into more of those aesthetics of just the utility of like enjoying something or pleasure or just awe-inspiring, like all of those things. So I thought that was a really helpful list for thinking through. You can almost like pick any product you love and kind of figure out, okay, which one of those buckets does it fall into for me?
Yeah, that's really helpful. That's a helpful heuristic as we're thinking through things today.
So do you want to talk more about this aesthetic idea? Because I think that ties in so closely to everything else we talk about on the show. Like, what for you, it's almost like you described the aesthetics of how a problem is solved. It's not just, I'm imagining you're not just talking about, oh yeah, the design of something looks good, like the veneer, but you're talking about like something deeper or bigger. Could you maybe just expound? What do you mean when you talk about the aesthetics of a product?
Oh, good question. So can we jump into an example?
Yeah, please.
Maybe I'll give one, then you can.
Sure.
So the one that came to my mind as a physical product that I really like is actually a new one, and it's the LAMY Safari fountain pen. And this was referenced and advocated by David Coggins on the Contender as maybe the best thing that you can buy under $30. And so I was like, okay, I've definitely got to give this a try. And if you pull up LAMY pens, I mean, they make these beautiful writing instruments. I've got mine in kind of like a matted charcoal. The ergonomics of the pen are spot on. It's got a little clip, but the big thing it's known for is being just kind of indestructible. So they're really tough pens. I think Coggins says that he always keeps one in his coat, always has one handy. And I was like, you know what? I've got a strong stance on a pencil, the Blackwing pencil, which I'm sure we've mentioned before. But right now on my desk, I've got these super cheap plastic pens that Cassie got at her work. And then I've just been using them. And I hate using them. Like, they feel awful. Like, I hate whenever I pick it up to, like, when I need a pen to, like, notarize a check, or I don't know if you call it notarize, or write a thank you letter. And I hate the way the ballpoint feels. But it was something that I was like, okay, what if instead of having that experience, and they're doing the same task, right? Both pens are writing, but the experience can be totally different when I'm holding something that's thoughtfully designed, that's intentional, that has a level of craftsmanship to it. And then I can kind of enjoy that or have a go-to here instead of just grabbing whatever half, the ink's kind of dried up in this pen and it's disposable and you don't think about it. And so for me, this was kind of a really welcome shift for not a lot of money, totally transformed how I use ink. And so it was something simple like this that I think plays out the dichotomy. Both of them are accomplishing a task, both pens, but one is a rich experience of using it as a fountain pen. Plus, it doesn't have to be a fountain pen. It could be a nice ballpoint. But the experience of that is so much more rich. It's pleasing. My eyes rest with it. It rests in my hand. It's something of value. And you can tell that it's not made to be used and then thrown away. And I do think there's something about products that we love when they're made to be, you're made to build a relationship with them. Like the other physical thing I was thinking about was, I've got an Orvis barn coat that it's funny every now and then I'll look at it and be like, man, I've worn this so many different places. And there's like a relationship with that coat that's the opposite of the world of fast fashion, where you wear something a couple of times and then it falls apart and you toss it. And it's the same thing with this pen experience. It's like there's a difference between a fungible thing that's disposable and then something that you're going to integrate into how you live. And so for me, this pen, the LAMY Safari, it adds something to my writing experience and thereby adds something to my life. A little small point of richness to it, a little kind of betterment. Although it accomplishes the same task, it's adding this aesthetic dimension or this richness of experience. So that's kind of how I'm approaching these. Okay, both pens could accomplish the same task, but one is experientially or phenomenologically very different.
I love that idea. And that's I actually think I saw that article, and because I've been subscribed to Coggins for the last month or so, and I briefly saw the pen. So it's cool that you actually went through and got it. So for me, on the physical product, it would probably be the Blackwing Sharpener that I just got because recently we both got some more Blackwings. I got mine for the first time, and so now I've got this sharpener, which, at first it's like, okay, I bought a $25 sharpener, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing? You can get one for $2 or $1 at the dollar store, right? But if you just Google the Blackwing pencil sharpener, and there's a specific one, I would need to look up the name, but it's just the sort of cylindrical looking one and not their extra additional piece. It's a beautiful thing that to just have on your desk. Like, it looks really nice, first of all. And then it catches all the shavings inside of it, so you don't have to, so it's more than just a sharpener, it's also the catcher for the shavings. So you don't need a trash can, and you just empty it out every once in a while. And it just probably will last me the rest of my life if I don't lose it. I mean, it just is like metal. So it feels really solid. And they also just sell the little blade replacers to sharpen or have a solid, sharp blade when you're twisting the pencil in there. So it's really a very simple product, right? Like, you can get a dollar solution. It's the same thing. You can pay $1 to solve the problem, or you can pay $25 to solve it for the next 10 years in a really beautiful way and have something that looks high quality on your desk. Obviously, it's a luxury item. Like, I don't have to spend that $25 for something, but it adds a richness to the experience, like you said, that I'm proud to put it on my desk. And it's not like, oh yeah, I want to just hide this thing because it looks terrible and it's, like meant for like a school backpack for kids or something, and it just doesn't really work. It's designed to work well with this product, and so it's a good integrated experience.
And it's not designed to be forgotten. I think that's the thing that as I was reflecting on this, of like the products that we don't resonate with are the ones that are designed to be lost or broken or replaced. Like, you think of that cheap pair of sunglasses you could get from a gas station for $10. Right. Those are designed to be fungible. You crush them, you lose them, you don't care about them. But the sharpener, which is a great example, right? It's designed to be used and to be kept and to be carried around with you and to get banged up and to be dropped on the pavement and rattled down. Right? It's designed to not disappear. I mean, even think about kind of like a bland Bic plastic pen or something, right? They're designed to be lost, right? No one goes around and replaces the ink cartridge to their Bic pen. I don't even think that's possible, actually.
I don't know if it is, actually, yeah.
Right? They're designed to be thrown away, and even the design itself is not about it, right? It's just neutral.
Here's a counter argument, though, okay? Because I have like a mug here that's filled with these Bic pens.
Yes.
And then some cheap, couple G2s, Sharpie, and then a cheap Bic mechanical pencil. And, you know, with these products, it's like I don't feel any sort of worry if I'm just writing down a quick list for the grocery store and I just grab the cheapest piece of paper. But then you give me my Moleskine and a Blackwing and I'm like, okay, let me think before I write. And I kind of feel like that puts pressure on me sometimes to like make my writing look good. Or if I'm sketching a diagram, it's like I need this to look pretty. Whenever I was recently hanging out with you and we were sketching some ideas out, you were just like using the Blackwing and pretty cheap, you know, notepad, but just ripping down ideas, and they were really messy and
very messy.
I felt that there was a lot of that freedom for you because you just maybe you work on paper a lot more than me. But I don't know, there's maybe a counter argument of like sometimes you need the cheap pair of sunglasses that you can throw on because you're going to go wakeboarding and you don't want to lose like a $300 pair. I don't know, just
totally
like counter argument.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some things that there are moments when the disposable thing is probably helpful, definitely helpful, but even maybe worthwhile to have. But I think it's a matter of longevity, but also a matter of, I think sometimes we just live in a broader world where almost everything tries to obey the disposable law, the law of disposability or something. So it's like, yeah, I think there is a way in which, okay, it is nice to just have a Bic pen, you know, laying in your bag. And obviously they've been incredibly successful. So people find it useful and valuable to have a pen that doesn't need to get, you know, I don't know, protected or guarded or cared for. But I think if we go back to our question, we don't love those products. Like they're useful and they're helpful. And maybe there's an occasion where it's the right product to use, but we don't love them. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're forgettable. They're very forgettable for sure.
Yeah, and so I think even if the Bic mechanical pencil is helpful and useful, it's like you don't go, man, I lost that pencil, like, and feel this sense of, man, we did all this writing with this pencil, and I remember the things I wrote with it, and it's got some sort of like connection with you, whether you want to say that's psychological or emotional or whatever you want to call that. Like we just don't do that, and so I think, although there may be products, and here's maybe the distinction I want to actually say, there may be products that are useful, but that we don't love them. And there may be great situations that we need to use those, the former, but the ones that we love, the products that stick to us, the products that enrich are not the ones that are disposable and useful alone, right? There's something else added, if we're getting a definition here, right? There's a little something else or a lot of something else that's making them great products, moving them from just a useful tool that we might discard to something that is an excellent, worthwhile product.
What software product do you love the most?
You could probably guess this one.
Is it Scrivener?
Got it. Got it. Nice.
Knew it.
Yeah, you nailed it. I really like Scrivener, and I've been a proponent of Scrivener for a couple of years now. Started using it in my master's program. It was recommended to me by a professor, and it's a really great platform. And I don't know if platform is a technical word. You download it. It's a software that it's kind of like Word, but imagine if you could see all your Word docs together. So you're working on a project and you've got multiple Word docs, but instead of having them in different little siloed partitions, like in a folder, like you can have them all together. And so you can move them around, or you can write paragraphs and then move those paragraphs around. So you can visually see it like a bunch of little sticky notes, these different documents. You can put put your research or PDFs or files that you're referencing, put it there so you don't have to leave the software to go find those. Everything can get coalesced into one project, and then it's got a bunch of different options to how those are displayed. You can write notes on them. You can have kind of marginalia going. You can have multiple screens up at the same time. And so practically it's really helpful for the writing process because it encourages revision, global revision, moving things around, but also it's just a really well-designed platform. The typefaces are nice. The kind of cream color, the different sort of customization to get things where you kind of, your eyes rest on them and you feel at home in a way of like, I can sit here and work. It's intuitive in a way. You can drag and drop things, this sort of stuff, but also it just feels good, right? It feels like, okay, I can sit and do some work here, because oftentimes I think it's the jarring points of bad design that erupt us out of work sometimes. Like when something doesn't open and you want it to open, or you have to, exit out of a window to go to another window, it's like, it's jarring. Whereas Scrivener, right, you've got something that's together, it's cohesive, like you're not breaking the flow of work by going and checking something. So I think in some ways it's the nice design that helps facilitate work, that helps give a better experience from the design of it to even the functionality that I just really like. And so I think it's a great tool. That's my kind of 2 cents on Scrivener, but I don't know, anything there in the description stand out?
Yeah, what do you think is the external problem that it solves, and then the internal problem, and then who is it solving this problem for?
Good question. So external problem, they have a bunch of different templates you can use. So whether you're, writing a screenplay or working on a dissertation, right? They've got kind of templates and tools that you can use to organize, or a novel, chapter tools and formatting tools. So they're solving a fair amount of external problems that have to do with formatting, first of all. But I think one of the main, I don't know if this is going to be external or internal, is that ability to have everything in one place. And so you don't have multiple windows open. You've got Scrivener open, and that's got all your research, all your notes. It's got your working draft. It's got, the breakdown. It's got your notes there. And so it's so unified that's the big problem that it solves for me, at least, is that it can bring everything together. I can open one document. I can have everything on the screen that I need.
What do you feel whenever you open up a page in Scrivener and you sit down and you have your cup of coffee? Like, what are the emotions going through you when you open the app?
Birds sing, and I feel this fuzzy feeling in my chest. Just kidding. Yeah, no, I know that I'm going there to work, and it's something that helps aid the excitement of the project, because I can get reacquainted quickly with what I've done. And I see little fingerprints of what I was working on all over it, right? It's not just the part of the process that I'm in, whether that be research or drafting or revision, it's not isolated from the other parts. You can really get a sense of the wholeness of a project when you look at Scrivener. So for me, it's that same sort of thing that picking up the Safari pen does, or putting on the kind of the Orvis jacket of, I feel a sense of rest. I feel a sense of things are where they should be, and now I can go about my business. And so instead of being jarred by what doesn't fit, I can now go about the thing that I want to do, because it's not an end in itself. There is that utility that's helping me accomplish something, but it's allowing me to accomplish it. I don't know. I think I'm trying to get to something like the disposable wants you to forget it. The beautiful in this way wants you to forget it too, but in a way that is not disposable, because I'm not hyper aware of it when I'm actually doing something in the jacket, or I'm not maybe hyper aware when I go to the pen, but it's still there and it's still offering something, and it's influencing it.
It just doesn't get in the way. Maybe it's not disposable, but that doesn't mean that it calls attention to itself. Like there's this simplicity where it just, things work and they're out of the way. I mean, that's the thing about like software and product side of things, is like, you don't think about how well iMessage works because it just works.
Sure.
But the moment your message like fails to send and you're like, okay, now I've got to make it a green button and like send as an SMS. It's like, it's annoying.
Exactly.
And there's this frustration, but 99% of the time you just don't think about iMessage. It just works. And it's not calling a ton of attention to itself. It's just solve your problem. It does what it needs to do.
And the wrong thing is to think that's simple, right? It's really hard to get there.
Yes, very hard, and much easier to just have a bunch of hacky things and messy user interface and poor experiences and bugs that aren't fixed. There's a lot that goes into it that's invisible underneath the surface for sure.
And this is an area of expertise for you. I mean, within product management, and especially with the work that you've been doing lately, is thinking about, I'm sure, the user experience and all those little points of friction that keep the experience from being seamless or keep it from being a place where you're like, oh, it just works. Like, I don't have to look and fidget with it. Like, this is just really helpful. Mm-hmm. And maybe we don't even know the little details of what makes it really helpful, but it doesn't mean the details aren't there.
Right. Yeah. No, I've been learning so much this last year. I'm totally a beginner in these things, but with a year under my belt now, I've definitely grown and learned a lot this year. And I was reflecting on that even this week, trying to write a little bit personally, thinking about these things. And yeah, it's the smaller the feature does not necessarily mean it's easier. That's definitely a lesson this last year, is like smaller little things. You just want this button to work. You just want this little thing to happen. Sometimes that can hide an iceberg underneath it of complexity that is just, you would never think of as just a lay person. But as an engineer, those things come up. And so that's definitely been, it's eye-opening. I've never thought about every experience I see on a screen was created by someone somewhere in a room, writing code or designing images. And it's pretty crazy to think that way. So then with this Scrivener thing.
Oh, I was going to ask you what yours was, and I was going to guess Notion, but I don't know if that's the one that you came down to.
Well, I wrote down 4, but I'm not going to go into all of them. If I just have to pick one, I'm going to go with, okay, I'm just going to list all 4 just because we don't have time to go into them, but I want to share them. So first of all, Proton. Proton makes a VPN. They make an encrypted email service. They make like a password manager like 1Password. They make a drive manager like Google Drive, and they make a calendar like Google Calendar. So they're kind of like a Google alternative that's privacy focused. Then Arc by the browser company. Arc is a web browser that's Chrome based. So it's pretty similar to Google Chrome, but it's kind of like trying to reimagine the web browser, because when's the last time you changed your web browser? That's just like the way that you enter the internet is the web browser. But we never kind of reconsider like that doorway, like, is it as good as it could be? And I've really loved that product this last year. Notion, been a fan of that for 2 or 3 years now, been loving it. And Copilot is copilot.money is their website. They're a finance app, kind of like You Need a Budget, or I think Dave Ramsey has like the Every Dollar app. There's a number of these different budgeting apps out there, Mint, but Copilot's been the best one that I've had. And I've tried all those other ones. I haven't tried the Ramsey one. So I couldn't just say one. I had to say 4. But with that said, I think the one I wanted to talk the most about today was Proton, just because I think, oh man, it's so hard for me to pick. I mean, because I could talk about all 4 of these. Do you decide, do you want me to talk about a new one that really made me feel some things this weekend? And like, I would love to talk about the experience of like even onboarding into that product and how it solved those things is very fresh. Or Arc or Notion are products that I've had a lot more, like I can actually speak to. I've used them for a long time, so there's a lot more trust in how I can like promote those products, I guess.
I'm glad that at least Notion was on the top 4. So I think
for sure.
I guess that one, but I would love to hear about the new one. Is it Proton?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I mean the Safari fountain pen's new to me, and it's been really fresh. I want to hear about a new software, and I'm so glad you've got a couple different things that people can go check out.
Yeah. Okay. So Proton, I already mentioned what they make, but the reason it's an interesting company is because they're based in Switzerland. So their main pitch, they make these privacy-focused tools. I think they started in like 2017, but their main pitch is we're in a very private country and a neutral country. And so you can save your emails there. You can use our VPN service, and it's in a country that's not basically just going to collect all that data. And so it's not necessarily that, like, that's not like the concern or reason I'm necessarily like, oh, I need this product. But that's their unique selling point, is that like we talk about privacy, but we can like walk the walk to a much deeper level because we don't even log it or store it. So we can't even see your data. And so we can't read your emails. In general, that's kind of the pitch of the product. But if you go to their website, proton.me, they walk you through like all these different products. And so I kind of realized as I was thinking through this weekend and kind of looking in the products, I have used their VPN before, and it's been a fine product that, you know, kind of invisible, just works in the background. You don't think about it. But then I was like, yeah, let me check out their email. I've used a Gmail account forever, and it kind of like a browser. It's like you never really consider like, is there a better email than Gmail? Because like most people use Gmail or Outlook, and those are kind of your options. And yeah, there's definitely other services, but most people don't really use a Yahoo email anymore or whatever the others are out there. So I just it's been a while since I thought through what's the best email client for me to use personally. And so I was like, yeah, I keep seeing more and more of these Proton emails floating around. So maybe I should check that out. And I've used their VPN. So to sort of summarize, I got on their website and started reading through it. And so I just started reading about it. And it was interesting because I was just noticing the journey I'm going on here is both a tangible, like maybe I should kind of hit reset on my emails and kind of have a new domain so that I don't have to like unsubscribe to stuff. And there's that side of it that's kind of like the tangible problem. And then there's like the emotional side, which is like, oh, they're kind of explaining the problem to me, which is, are you sure that everything you're using is like actually that secure? And here we're the experts on this. Let's teach you. So it kind of took me on a bit of an emotional journey of like, they're making me feel safer. And this product offers this safety that this other tool doesn't have. Potentially, this product also could replace a calendar. It could replace a Google Drive. So I don't know. I just got kind of excited about the product, and onboarding was really simple. It's a free account, so I'm just on the free plan still, but obviously fresh. I still want to test it out for a while before I say, yes, I'm going to kind of switch over from Gmail. But I thought that the way that I felt both a utility and an aesthetic or actually an emotional side to like the problem, and how they walked me through a really consistent experience that helped me feel that safety. And it's been a long time since I've downloaded a product and everything just worked.
Sure.
And it felt really good. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, let me download the mobile app. Let me log in. Everything was seamless. Everything was smooth. And that was a long explanation. But yeah, what stood out? I mean, it was really cool just signing up for it.
Yeah, that's neat. So the big thing that stands out to me is that you said they explained the problem that you didn't maybe necessarily think that you had. And I think this is just so true on that sometimes you don't recognize that the experience is a problem. So I'm thinking the metaphor that jumped out to me is if you're playing guitar, right, and you're playing on old strings, you don't really realize that they're that old until you put on fresh strings. And then you're like, oh my gosh, those old strings were worn out. And so, of course, you can tell that they're worn, but there's this difference of if that's just what you're used to, then there's no kind of recognition of maybe there's a better way to do it. If you're just used to playing on the old strings, then you don't even realize that you need new ones. But when you try on a guitar with new strings, all of a sudden it's like, oh, where's this been? And I think that's kind of one of the things too. It's if you're just used to using the disposable pen and then you try nice pen, you start to recognize that there's a difference in experience and maybe there's an experiential problem. And so I love that this is like part of their thing is to say, oh, look, you don't just have to do the default. It doesn't just have to be Gmail, right? I love how you said you don't even realize you're going through the door, but you did. You chose to go through the store. And so it's almost this recognition that products say, hey, there's a better way to do this. Can be really, really powerful because we're creatures of, acclimation, and we try to, acclimate to whatever we're using. And so in some ways, it's until you kind of get jarred. And I think good products do this in a really, interesting and fascinating way. And I think good marketing does this, not fear mongering, but it's this idea of, is your data secure? Here's what we're concerned about. This is what we propose to fix. Like, that's great marketing, right? That's showing that, hey, look, you've just been using the same old, coffee machine forever, and that's fine. But if you just go a little bit further, right, just a little initial investment or a little change to, even the setting of your grinder or something like that, look at what you can get. And so I do think it's the ability to move our paradigms to see, oh, this is not the only option, that can be really compelling for products.
Arc is very similar. With Arc, it was like you've used Google Chrome probably, or Safari, or Microsoft Edge, whatever kind of the default browser on your computer is. Maybe there's time to innovate this, And so they're innovating on multiple levels. Their big vision is like that the way that technology is moving is in a computer on the internet, where the computer that you use, you might go up to the library or an internet cafe and have a box, and that's the computer, but it's pretty much a blank slate. And then you log in to your cloud computer, which is your browser, and you have an account or something like that. And then you access all of these web apps, because that's what most things are. Notion's a web app. Right now we're recording on a web app. Everything's a web app these days. And so like Adobe moving in that direction with some of their products on the Creative Suite. So this idea that your web browser is really important because it's almost becoming the new computer. And then the physical computer is becoming like just this blank canvas that we use to enter the actual computer online. So whether I travel to Switzerland or I'm here in the US or wherever I am in the world, I can access that cloud computer. So really interesting concept. But right now their practical product is just a browser. And so it's this really beautiful, just bezeled edge around the screen, and that's it. Like just a thin line around the content. If you went to apple.com or something, you would just see the website and nothing in the toolbar at the top. It's sort of that product that just disappears and lets you focus on what you actually came to see. But it has all these things under the hood and these extra details once you learn about how it works. And so it's kind of weird at first because you're like relearning how a browser works. But then you're like, oh, why haven't we thought of these things before? This is so much more beautiful than Chrome. And even some of the people that worked and built Chrome have now joined that company and are working at it. So it's cool that there's like this iteration happening in the internet.
That's great. Yeah, I think there's a lot of richness there. Of simplicity in some ways is also an attribute that we love. I like how you highlighted that. I think is it the Steve Jobs quote that says simplicity is elegance or something like that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it is. And I just really find the idea that simplicity strikes us as easy, but it's actually hard. That's compelling, because I think it's the same thing in writing. And so as we're tracing these thoughts across disciplines and across the craft, simplicity is elegant, and it's really hard to do right. It's easy to do wrong. It's very difficult to do right. But whether this is, composing a lyric, or whether you're, writing a poem, or whether you're trying to create, the right guitar lick to open a song, right? There's a simplicity that is very, very difficult because it's a stripping down of what has to be there, or stripping of what is extemporaneous to what has to be there. And this even reminds me of our conversation with Will from a podcast or two ago, where he talked about lyrics having to be the necessity of what's there. And we mentioned the iceberg theory of like this impulse for us to put everything that we can into it, right? Bells and whistles and toolbars and all this stuff. But there's like a simplicity that is really inviting. And so I think that's one of those. Maybe it's one of those aesthetic principles that we can see appear across disciplines.
So it makes me think of the parable or the story of like the emperor's clothes, right? Of like the guys who, what is the history of that story? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. I don't know the history.
I don't know where it comes from, but it's like this story of like the emperor who's like told that these new clothes look amazing. and they're like the latest fashion, but he's basically naked because
Yeah,
they're no
yeah.
clothes, right? They're literally stripped away. But he like believes that everyone can see the clothes but him. So I don't know where that comes from or what the moral of that story is. It's kind of whack, but whatever. The point is, in music, I've thought of that story a few times before because I've thought of this question of like the easier thing to do whenever you're insecure or uncertain about your work, whether it's a song or a writing or whatever, is add to it, I think. Like, okay, I'm going to add 6 more instruments to this right now. I'm going to triple the layers on every single thing so it's really full, and then I'm going to just make it louder. And then it's like, oh, it doesn't sound better. And then on the flip side, there's that fear that I have of like, wow, this feels a little simple, a little transparent. Like I can hear everything going on in the song. Like it's not loud enough. It's missing something. Does it sound good enough? And then getting in your head where you're like, have I stripped it down so much that this is the emperor's clothes where it doesn't actually sound good? Like it's naked and it needs something to be added. Or is it at that level of like, no, this feels right, but it feels a little bit too like, what I'm trying to describe is this space between having enough in the song that the imagination is able to fill in the rest.
Good.
Versus having so little in the song that you turn it off. And
that
you're
it's
like,
shallow.
This sounds bad or it's cheap. There's a step beyond the cheap, shallow to a very simple, but expands with your imagination. You get to fill in the space. Like Will said in that episode, leave a little bit of breathing room for people to think about the lyrics that you just said rather than filling it in with a lot more words. But then if you say too few words or too basic of words, then it's not deep. It's not really artistic. So there's this weird tension of trying to find where is the line that this song is really good or this song is stripped down too much.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That was very rambling.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's, another axis to come down at this idea for multiple disciplines of simplicity and kind of an elegance here that, there is a line between things being simple and elegant or simple and crude or simple and like rudimentary. You know what I mean? I think I think it's totally true. And I think we need taste a lot of times for this. Like we always come back to artistic taste.
Yes, it is a taste thing because it ties in with something I've heard Jack Butcher talk a lot about from Visualize Value. He mentions like when you're creating something, you don't know what you know that other people don't know. The things that I take for granted as a music producer that I know that are obvious to me that maybe are invisible to you because you don't know them yet. So there's something I could say to you that would blow your mind maybe, but it's like obvious to me. But then there's also something I would say to you that you would be like, that's obvious. Like, duh, why are you talking down to me? But sometimes you just are blind to knowing, am I saying something right now that's completely obvious and makes me sound stupid? Or is it actually something that's really thoughtful that they just don't know yet?
Yeah, I've encountered that exact thing with teaching. So like when I first started teaching, I was like, what do I have to tell to these students? Like, what do I got? Like, I feel like I need more stuff. I need more, just like you said.
Yes.
And then, I got to the place where like, I can't remember if this is the actual moment or not, but I think someone said, Grapes of Wrath, that was Ernest Hemingway, right? And I was like, it just took me off guard because I'm like, the most basic fact of things that I know is that Steinbeck wrote The Grapes of Wrath. Like, this is young Carter. Like that's like just, doesn't everybody know that? And then it was this realization of like, oh, maybe my students haven't actually heard of these things, or maybe they haven't heard of, ethos, pathos, and logos and how rhetorical appeals work and, what a good sentence looks like. And the more I've taught over the last couple of years, the more I've recognized that the simple building blocks are the most difficult to master, and they're the ones that, we don't have experience with. I mean, your average, educated freshman coming into a university, we have to still wrestle with the fundamentals because the fundamentals are, you work a lifetime on them, and the things that we just take for granted are actually the things that we need to talk about and dig into. And so, yeah, oftentimes you know a lot more than you think. And I think they said, I can't remember where this statistic came from, but read 3 books on a subject, you're in the top 5% of the world in understanding that subject. just because no one's read 3 books on that subject. So if you read 3 biographies of, Teddy Roosevelt, you're going to know more than 95% of the world knows about Teddy Roosevelt. And so it's this idea that in some ways expertise is this long 10,000 hour mastery, all these ideas, but also it's pretty quick. Like you can become an expert on a subject by reading a couple books on it. And yeah, the move from 95% to the 1% may take a lifetime, but the move from the 0 to the 95 is often really quick.
Josh Kaufman says it's 20 hours. So there's a TED Talk.
Ooh, nice.
You can look up called something like, just type in Josh Kaufman.
We'll link it.
The first 20 hours. We'll link it in the description. But I just watched it like in the past week or two. And his idea is that the 10,000 hour rule, which I'm sure we've talked about on this show, there's been this long game of telephone that's been played where it went from saying 10,000 hours is how you master and become the most elite in your field to saying 10,000 hours is how you learn something, which is like 2 or 3 steps down this game of telephone. But the result is that people think it takes 10,000 hours to learn Spanish. No, it takes 10,000 hours to become the best speaker.
Sure.
But it takes about 20 hours to learn the fundamentals that get you a huge amount of advantage. And he demonstrates in that talk by playing his 20th hour of ukulele. And so it's just this powerful lesson of like, there's a huge curve of growth in the first 20 hours of learning any new thing or working on something. And then, like you said, then the diminishing returns start. And it's like going from 95% to the 1% is what the craft is all about in a way. Because
yes.
It's like really refining these super subtle details that are hard to articulate.
Exactly.
But I thought that was very interesting and almost a corrective, because I don't recall how we've talked about that on the show, but I'm sure we brought it up before.
Yeah, this is such a rich conversation. And I think in regards to product, it goes back to the idea of maybe you have something to offer that just people haven't thought about. Maybe they don't know that there's a better browser out there. And
right.
It's not this giant, paradigm shattering shift. It's just sharing with them a problem, right? It doesn't have to be this kind of long duration. It's, man, I thought everybody knew about this. And I think maybe sometime our products do that for us. They show you, hey, this is just really simple, but you haven't thought about this. And then it moves us, right? And it immediately moves us in a direction where we see things differently by sharing what is the obvious. Because the obvious sometimes is a thing right under your nose that we take for granted. So I think good products in some ways bring us back to the obvious in a way that's fresh. It brings us back to, as you used in your metaphor, the doorway, and say, oh, look, there's other doors. And that's what the product's doing for us. Oh, look, there's other ways that you can write. There's other jackets that you can buy, right? There's an option beyond sweatpants that's comfortable, right? It's bringing you back to an obvious problem. And that's why I really like how, I think for us, our recent conversations have really tried to drill down on, what is the issue? Whether this is writing an article to help someone, become a podcaster or to get a Substack going. What's the problem? You've been really helpful in helping me think through that and dwelling. What am I offering? What's the exigence in rhetorical terms? Like, what is the thing I'm responding to? Because I think that's the thing that we just take for granted, and we get the wheels spinning and we start thinking about like all these crazy complex things that we could do with a product. And then we forget, like, what is this trying to accomplish again? Like, what if it's really simple? I want an attractive rain jacket that sheds water well, that sits on my shoulders, that gives a, appealing figure, and that's a color that allows my eyes to rest on it, and it becomes part of place. It's like, what if that's what we have to do? And it's really simple. Like, does the raincoat shed water? How many raincoats don't shed water very well? I mean, it's like the basics. A lot of them.
Truly. Finding a good product that literally just does what it says it's going to do and does it with a high level of, accuracy or quality. That's the big, I think you actually hit on an interesting thread that's happening through these episodes, which is like, I think that it's design thinking, this very problem solving mindset of asking why like 5 times, or really drilling down on, okay, what was the original intent here? Why did we start this conversation, or why did we start working on this project, or what is my goal launching a Substack? Like, there's been several conversations where it's kind of come back to, let's define the problem. And I think that is a very much the designer toolkit and designer mindset just in general.
And another light bulb that just kind of went off in my mind as you were saying that, the problem we often think about just in terms of utility, but when you recognize that the aesthetics is a problem in itself to be solved and not just some secondary, tertiary, peripheral issue, and you say, no, how this looks and feels and interacts with someone, that's actually a problem. Like when you recognize that, it's like it supercharges everything. Because it's easy to say, I need something to make marks on a piece of paper. Like that's the utilitarian problem that a pen is solving.
There's already enough of those out there too. Like there's enough pens out there. Why would you make a new one?
Exactly.
Why would LAMY make a pen if there's already 1,000 pens out there? Well, it reminds me of this quote. I want to say it's a Steve Jobs quote. I'm not sure, but it's this idea that there's always room in any crowded market. There's always room for more great, like more premium, high quality. Thinking about, I heard this somewhere, and I want to say it's Steve Jobs, but just thinking about there's always room for more great movies because there's a lot of crappy movies.
Yeah.
Always
exactly.
room for more great songs because we're always hungry for that novelty of a great song for the summer. I just bring this up because it feels like all the products we've mentioned are like boutique, premium. Like even if you look up Scrivener, it says like the premium writing software for,
okay, nice.
Nice. Novelists, etc. So it's like there's some aspect I think that we're drawn to on this show of the aesthetic, and the aesthetic is often the people that are thinking about the problem on both levels. We need to be able to write, and we need to look good on the desk, and we need to feel good in your hand, and we need to stand for craftsmanship and quality and caring for the planet and these different things that are deeper.
Exactly.
Like it's just something about that.
Yeah, I think we've just forgot that those things matter. I mean, this is my humanity is almost soapbox of like, we've just forgotten that aesthetics are not just like fluff. Like, oh, you can make it look pretty. It's like, no, like it actually matters. Something, how it looks on your desk and what kind of space that creates is not neutral. It's anything but neutral. And I think we are just in a culture that says, no, we can define something by its utility. And if we want to think about how it looks, is it designed nice? Is it, quote, pretty to look at, right? If you want, we can do that, but it doesn't really matter, right? The products that crash through our, kind of blinders on our visions are the products that take that seriously and that recognize there's two problems here and they're both important. I think that's an awesome takeaway from this conversation.
I love it. I think that brought it full circle to the start of the conversation, the dichotomy of utility and aesthetics. That's good, man. Well, thanks for listening to The Craft. This was a fun conversation on why we love the products that we love. If you loved this episode, there's 3 things you can do to support our work. First, follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this right now. Second, send the link to one person that you think would enjoy this episode. Text it to them or send them an email. And third, let us know how we can make it better by emailing us at heycraftpodcast@gmail.com. If you have a question, point of feedback at how we could improve, or an idea for a new episode, let us know about that. And lastly, just want to give a shout out to Elizabeth Newell. She designed our cover art, and you can learn more about her work at elizabethnewell.work or on Instagram at elizabethisadesigner. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.